If you're a recovering people pleaser or if you're still stuck in people pleasing, this is the episode for you. And I'm so excited because I literally just opened up my content chart to see what's this podcast about this week. And I was like, people pleasing right after the holidays. What a perfect subject. So I'm really excited to dive into people pleasing and help you get out of your people pleasing ways that actually still is pleasing people. Because people pleasing isn't what you think it is, it's actually manipulation, and you're actually deferring disappointment. So if you're a people pleaser, you identify as a people pleaser, or you're a recovering people pleaser like me, buckle up, friend, and let's dive into this week's episode. Hey there, you just stumbled into the Anxious Creative Podcast, where overthinking turns into ahas, mess ups become magic, and anxious spirals, totally part of the process. I'm Dawn Bradley, your messy, imperfect host, here to help you, the recovering people pleaser, the perfectionist, to stop chasing the unachievable and start embracing the chaos. Spoiler alert, that's where the real magic happens anyway. So buckle up, friend, because we're about to have some laugh so hard till you cry moments, a few hard truths to help you grow, and naturally a little, or let's be honest, a lot, of oversharing. You ready? Let's dive in. So I don't even know when I first started realizing that I was a people pleaser. I remember thinking I was really good at customer service. And when I worked for somebody else, I was like, my business is going to be so much better because I'm going to have such excellent customer service because I never said no. And I don't even know when people pleasing became into my vocabulary. But when I started to realize it, I started to realize, oh my gosh, I'm willing to abandon myself. And I don't think I even knew who I was. I don't think I even had an identity because I molded and shape-shifted to whatever I thought people needed me to be in order to be liked because it was a survival mechanism. And what I need you to know first and foremost is that people-pleasing is born from a need of control over a situation. And I know that isn't what you want to hear because we usually convince ourselves, and I say we, but hello, it's me. I convinced myself for a really long time that I was just doing things for other people, that I cared so much for other people. And while I did, and I still do, I can look back in hindsight and realize there was this deep-seated insecurity that if I upset, disappoint, or hurt somebody by me choosing me over them, that was somehow wrong. And I think it started, I don't know, we'd have to ask my therapist. I want to say it started from a very young age. And I think a lot of women are born into this because that's how society shapes us, but also a lot of men are as well. And people pleasing comes from a place of controlling the other person's reaction. So we don't want to offend, hurt, disappoint somebody else, but most importantly, we don't want to have an unpredictable response. That unpredictable response means our fight, flight, or freeze goes into action. And if something's unpredictable, we can't be in control. And clearly there's probably, if you go way back in your memory, or maybe you've buried it, there was a moment where you did something for honoring yourself and you got an unpredictable response from somebody in your life, I'm going to guess like a parent figure or a guardian, that jolted your system and that made you go, I never want to feel that way again. And so born out of that is this testing the temperature of the room always. Where's this person at? Trying to predict what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what is going to make them the happiest to keep myself safe. So people pleasing is born out of a need of control for safety. It keeps you feeling safe. And when you understand this, you can have a lot more empathy for yourself, but also for other people who are stuck in it. I know for me right now, even while I'm saying this, I'm thinking about someone in my life who's also a people pleaser and working through it. And I'm like, it's not just, come on, put yourself first, but it's also this deep-seated fear of like, how do I stay safe? And so it's from this deep-seated fear of rejection as well. People-pleasing can be a fear of rejection and a need to control people's responses and perceptions of you. And so if you can be likable always to everyone in every way, then you won't be rejected, but you'll never really be you. And I think this is one of the biggest things that I learned very early on was I lost who I was. I completely dwindled myself down to the bare bones and I had no personality anymore. And actually, the more you try to be for everyone, the less you're going to be for anyone. People will walk all over you and take advantage of you unknowingly. And this is what I need you to understand. The moment you're getting frustrated or resentful for how people are taking advantage of you or treating you, and you do so much and you go above and beyond and no one seems to give back to you. I know those feelings. Those are feelings I felt. But if people have no idea and you're saying yes and you're agreeing and you're not standing up for yourself because you don't know how, because the only way you know how is to get angry or aggressive or to be loud. And I know that one as well for the longest time. And still in certain relationships I have in my life, the only way I'm heard is if I get angry. If I stay calm, I get dismissed. If I stay cool and collected, I'm not heard. And then if I get loud, if I get angry, then it's calm down. And so this fear of rejection, this need for control and wanting people to like you, but then also feeling like you don't even know who you are because all you've been doing is appeasing everyone else in order to get that. I always say it's like having a cup with a hole in the bottom. It feels really good in the moment for someone to be like, oh my gosh, you're the best. Thank you so much. When you do something that's people pleasing but dishonoring yourself. But they give you, like, I always think of like, with my business clients being like, can you get me in on Sunday? And I'd have Sundays off and I'd be like, you know what? I'll fit you in. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're the best. And they'd be like, oh, I am the best. And it would feel so good for a moment, but it was so fleeting because when you get a compliment out of abandoning yourself, you like need that validation over and you become like addicted to the validation. And that's what gets us in the people pleasing addiction, I'm going to call it, because we're constantly seeking that hit of dopamine of someone telling you how amazing you are. But when you don't actually believe it in yourself and you don't honor it yourself, it's a cup that can never be filled. And the craziest thing about it is when you start honoring yourself, I'm not going to say you stop people pleasing, but we're going to redefine people pleasing. But when you start honoring yourself and learning how to compassionately communicate, meaning I really want to say yes to that, but I realized I have to say no, instead of feeling like your only option is to say yes and give in or be like, I can't believe you'd ask that of me. That's what we think our two options are. And so we opt for the people pleasing, the giving in and not honoring ourselves because we think the opposite is having to get angry or irate because that's probably all that you've witnessed growing up. But learning that you can honor yourself and say, I really want to say yes to that. Or, hey, I hear you. And I really want to be able to say yes to that. But the reality is I won't be able to give you my best. When you learn that compassionate, empathetic communication, it is a game changer. Because then you can honor yourself while communicating to the other party in a way that actually still controls their response. Now, can you control someone else's response 100%? No, but when you learn compassionate communication, especially the way I teach inside of my program, Rock Your Business, for your business, but this also, people in Rock Your Business change their lives and their relationships as well, because it's a sneaky little program that helps you not only earn and make more money in your business, but also help set better boundaries and healthier communication in your life and relationships as well. Small plug for Rock Your Business. But when you learn how to compassionately communicate, standing up for yourself isn't that scary anymore. So you need to start acknowledging when you're excessively focusing on other people's responses to you. When are you thinking, how do I control this? How do I make sure it's the right response? And how are you abandoning yourself? And one of my favorite little quotes is to say, I really want to say yes right now, and it's not a no, but I need some time to get back to you. Or say, I always think of like if a client's like lingering for too long, it's the end of your day, be like, hey, it's been so great to chat and I want to keep chatting, but I got to get going. And so let's save this story for another time. I really want to hear it. I know sometimes ending a conversation is really hard. And then you run late for your next client and you're feeling frustrated and whatever. And so learning how to compassionately communicate and acknowledging when that need for wanting to abandon shows up and just start there. Step one is just starting to recognize when it happens. And that's actually probably one of the hardest things to do is when you start to be aware of the things that you weren't aware of before, you can quickly start to beat yourself up. One of the biggest things for me that was the hardest to embrace in my self-awareness journey, and there is no arrival point, let's be clear, I am a flawed human that still makes mistakes all the time. But one of the hardest things was learning where I was lying to myself and recognizing my patterns. And that's some of the hardest shit that I've ever gone through because all of a sudden the ignorance is no longer ignorance, it's arrogance. Because ignorance truly is bliss when you have no idea something exists. All of a sudden when you know it exists and you choose to ignore it, it's arrogance. And so recognizing your pattern of like when you're going into self-abandoning and, oh, I'm going to regret this later. Just start there. And maybe you still fall into still replying the same way. Don't beat yourself up. This is going to take time, friend. I am almost 42 years old. This did not happen recently to me. I want to say it was like 10 years ago. I started to recognize this pattern. Probably more so in 2016 when I ended up in the hospital thinking I was dying because I was overexerting myself. So 2016, I would have been 33. Yeah, so 33. So I'm almost 42. I'm 41 currently. So how many years is that? I don't know. 33, 7, 8 years ago. It's been a journey. So have some grace for yourself. So the next step to overcoming and recovering from people pleasing is setting boundaries. Isn't about saying no to another person. It's about saying yes to you. And this is really freaking hard. I had to exercise this week, and it was probably one of the, I'm going to cry. Oh, it's been a minute. I used to let myself get quite emotional on this podcast, and then I got to a point, we'll talk about imperfection and perfectionism later, where I thought I got to a point where I should be perfect. Saying yes to yourself is really hard, especially when it means having to possibly hurt somebody else and hurt yourself, having to walk away from unhealthy scenarios. It's really hard. And saying no to somebody while also saying yes to yourself as a recovering people pleaser can be really hard. And it can break you. Losing a lifelong client, losing a friend, losing a relationship. These are the things that we don't want to experience and we run away from. And yet, I know I was in a 10-year relationship before. I know the self-abandonment of people pleasing, of not adhering to my boundaries, of saying, if you do this again, then I'm going to leave, and not leaving. And I know the self-disgust, the self-hatred, and the disappointment I felt in myself until finally I walked away. And I said yes to me because I remember sitting in a therapy appointment and the anxiety of, I don't know, should I stay? Should I go? These are these good things, but then there's these things. And realizing if I stay, I will never fully respect myself. And self-respect is one of the most important things you can carry in your life. And so if you're going to stop people pleasing, yes, you need to recognize the root of it is a need for control, which a lot of us felt unsafe a lot in our life. And so controlling others feels really safe. And then learning to set boundaries and saying yes to you feels really selfish when you've been told to make sure you take care of everyone else. But it's like that whole, you've probably heard me say it and you've heard other people say it in the airplane, put your oxygen mask on before you can help others. If you put your oxygen mask on, you can breathe and help way more people. But yet I still struggle because I want to be flexible and I want to be liked and I don't want to lose people. And I remember stopping people pleasing in my business and losing some clients. And that's the reality of it. And some will step up. Some will go, you know what? You're worth it. And you're right. And this is good. But the people that took advantage, the people that benefited from you not having boundaries are the ones that likely will have the hardest time with you setting them. And sometimes that's the best clients. Sometimes that's the closest friends. Sometimes those are the family members that you think support you. And maybe they actually do in some warped reality. But understanding that you are allowed to set boundaries, here's what you need to know about boundaries is boundaries are not about controlling someone else. Again, going back to recognizing people pleasing as a form of control, boundaries are not about controlling someone else. It's about telling someone an action you will take if something occurs. So if you show up late to your appointment, there will be a fee. If you no-show or late cancel, there will be a fee. That isn't meant to change their behavior from no-showing or late canceling. It is about letting them know about the consequence. It is then your job to implement the fee. It's telling the friend, hey, if you keep bringing up that night that I got completely blasted and embarrassed myself, and I know you think it's funny, but if you keep bringing it up, I'm not going to be able to hang out with you anymore. And if they keep bringing it up, you go, you know what? I can't come out with you anymore. And lots of times we go, I can't come out with you more. You've got to stop doing it. And we keep trying to remind people. I told you that you can't do that, or I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. And we keep using it as a threat. It's like knowing that your parents always said that they turn the car around and go home, but they never did. I met somebody who actually did that to their kids. And I was like, you're one badass parent. Because we learn very quickly as humans, we're animalistic in nature. If someone's threats are empty, we will continue, even if we don't mean to hurt another person, we will continue to push them as far as they can go if we don't think that they're actually serious. And I think that's something that I'm recognizing I've done a lot in my life is I've done empty threats, hoping that the threat is enough to change the person's behavior instead of recognizing people will tell you who they are by their behavior, and it's your job to walk away and the relationship and the connection if it is crossed. And then step 3 is shifting from needing others' approval to just becoming authentic, which is so hard. And it's been a journey, but I got the best compliment yesterday. I was hanging out with a friend and I was having a hard day. And she said, so-and-so, who is a lady that I met like a year ago. We had coffee yesterday and we were talking about you. And she said, you know what I love about Dawn? That she doesn't sugarcoat things and she shows up just authentic, which something to that regard. And I was like, wow, I'm not scared to share when I've had a bad day. I have not always been this way. And being authentic and risking and experiencing rejection because of it is really hard. It has not been the easiest road, but when you can stop seeking others' approval, which I still sometimes fall into, I'm human, but when you can stop seeking approval from others and start going for authenticity, you will start to feel so much better. The connections you do make will be stronger and deeper. And I'll tell you, I have fewer connections with people now, but stronger and deeper rooted, and it feels so good. And even yesterday, the friend that I hung out with, I called her and I was like, where are you? I need to come over now. And I've never really had that where I've had somebody like that lives within a few blocks from me that I could just go over, that I felt it was like this reciprocal relationship of I can be there for you and you can be there for me, and you're going to listen to me when I'm like losing my mind, and you're going to take everything with a grain of salt because you know I'm like batshit crazy right now because everything seems surreal, but you're going to be like a rock for me. And having that and being able to authentically express myself without this person judging me, judging the scenario, or even going to hold me to anything. They're just going to let me vent, cry, scream, bawl, whatever I needed to do. Those kind of relationships you can only find through being your authentic self. My friend and I would have never met each other if I would have continued to be this version of myself that I thought I had to be back in 2014, which was never made a mistake, always super professional, never made any offside jokes, definitely didn't tell poop or fart jokes, and wouldn't admit that my favorite restaurant meal is chicken nuggets. And I love the Backstreet Boys. I used to be so embarrassed that I loved the Backstreet Boys. And now I'm like, fuck it. I love the Backstreet Boys. So that's where I'm going to leave it at today, is if you want to stop people pleasing and you want to recognize that it is a form of manipulation because it's trying to control a person's response to you. And here, instead of beating yourself up over it, I want you to recognize that it is born from a place, again, I'm going to repeat this so many times, it is born from a place of wanting to feel safe. So I want you to, I know this feels like therapized woo-woo-y work, but I want you to just have a second with the version of yourself that is a people pleaser and ask yourself, what age was I when people pleasing started? And just the first thing that comes to mind, and I think 5-year-old Dawn right away. And I want you to just even journal or close your eyes and just envision that version of you and say, thank you so much for trying to keep me safe. Thank you so much for doing your job of trying to keep me safe. I've got it now. I am safe and I'm going to be okay. Recognizing that people pleasing is coming from a place of wanting to feel control because you want to feel safe. And then secondly, learn to set healthy boundaries and communicate them effectively and compassionately. Huge. And that step 2, sounds, and just do that. That's going to take some time. You're going to want to have a guide, a mentor, a coach to help you with that. It's not going to come overnight. You're going to mess up, or you're going to say things, or you can never, here's the thing, you can't control how people receive, perceive, or understand you. And being misunderstood is one of my biggest things. Feeling like people don't understand me, or that people don't want to understand me, or that people don't inquire to understand me more is a big pain point for me. And feeling misunderstood, misperceived, or misunderstood, did I say misunderstood twice? Misunderstood is really hard. But at the end of the day, you can only meet people where they're at. And if they're not at the same place as you or beyond, they may not understand what you're doing. And that's okay. And then thirdly, shift your focus from approval from others to authentically being yourself. The one thing that I've learned to do really quickly is apologize. When someone misunderstands me, because when I say no and they're like, whoa, okay. And then instead of cowering and being like, you know what, let me second guess that, or fearing their disapproval, I go, hey, if you have any qualms with it, if people say like a passive aggressive comment to me, I just get really clear. Hey, if you want any clarity on this, let me know. If there's any confusion. I've had people do this. I'm trying to think of an example. I can think of the scenario, but I can't remember exactly what the person said to me. But it was like about, there was some sort of, me and a friend were going to hang out. And we said, let's hang out. And then they were like, hey, I'm on my way to your house. And I was like, I didn't realize we had committed to coming to my house. And I think it was a miscommunication, and they just assumed that they were coming over. And I could have easily fallen into approval. But instead I went into authenticity. I said, hey, I'm not really in the headspace, nor is my house in a state where I'm ready to have people over, but I'm at the dog park right now if you want to come meet me. Super clear, being authentic. And it didn't feel like I wasn't dismissing them, but the people pleasing me would have gone for the approval. Oh, okay. I'm just at the park, but I'll be home in a few minutes. Because I would have felt like I had to be approving for them so that they stayed happy, so that I could control and feel safe. Because what if I say, oh, hey, I misunderstood. I didn't know that we were talking about coming over to my house. I don't think that's going to work. What if they get mad at me? What if they get upset at me? Then I'll feel bad. Then I'll feel embarrassed. Then they're going to be mad at me. And if they're mad at me, then they might act out, and that's going to feel really unsafe. But when you can communicate your boundaries clearly and effectively and compassionately, you can fall into that authenticity a lot better. Thanks for joining me today on the Anxious Creative Podcast, friend. Remember, people pleasing isn't what you think. It's about controlling other people's responses to you, not being compassionate towards them. But the good news, when you start honoring yourself and communicating with vulnerability, you don't just break free from people pleasing, you start building the life, business, and relationships you've always dreamed of. If you want to stop people pleasing in your business without sabotaging your income, check out the show notes for a link to my free workshop, or head to dawnbradley.com/free class. And don't forget to join me next week, where we'll dive into the anticipation trap, why fear feels bigger than it is, and how to take action anyway. We'll explore the psychology of fear, how anticipation makes it worse, and practical ways to take the first step. But as always, until next time, stay weird, stay messy, and most importantly, stay unapologetically you. See you next week, friend.